if you're just joining us, it is 95.1 Nigeria Info, your number one talk station where we have the most passionate and trustworthy conversations. And it is tonight with Somi, this lovely 14th day of March 2024. It's 11:05 p.m. That means it's time for us to get into our bonded conversation. And what bonded is basically is where we get to look into the first unit of our society, the smallest, but still the most impactful, and see how we can, take issues that people are having, starting one, keeping one, and even sometimes managing one after it has fallen apart, to see how, we don't end up raising the wrong kind of people that are putting into the society. And last week, with my lovely guest, Funmi Olubakin, our therapist, and counselor, we started the conversation on single parenting, and for some reason it just wound its way into our conversation for this evening, which is co-parenting. And one definitely leads into the other, and it's so important that we're able to establish how to make both situations work. Sometimes you have single parents and they still have to deal with the spouse, when it comes to raising their child. I'm going to put out some statistics on that one and how it has affected us and why we're having this conversation. But before that, let me introduce my guest, Funmi Olubakin, who is here with us this evening. Hi, Mrs. Olubakin. How are you doing? Hello?
Hello, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
please?
I can hear you. Welcome. How are you doing this evening?
Fantastic. Fine, thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good to have you here as always.
Yes, so good to be back.
All right. So our conversation last week, we're looking at single parenting, and the ultimate person that gets to how would I put it, benefit or suffer from a home that you have broken, or maybe by widowhood, or just somehow you have a single parent, or you have a parent who has to handle a child. The ultimate person that gets to benefit or suffer from that is the child, right? A search in 2019 involving 6,245 children and young people in the United Kingdom. I know we're not talking Africa here, but we'll get to that as well. Reported that parental separation was more likely to harm the mental health of children aged 7 or more. Yes. It further noted that family breakup was a known cause of mental health problems, anxiety, and depression in children. Now imagine children that young having to deal with these issues, right? And aside from mental health problems, they are found to be more likely to have emotional and behavioral problems than those from stable homes. When you look at,
correct.
When you look at some more statistics, one of the major causes that leads to these kinds of separation and the ultimate effect on children is divorce. And the divorce rate worldwide as of 2021, when they looked at 12 countries with the highest divorce rate, Nigeria was ranked 11 with a 2.9 divorce rate. And so, yeah, exactly. So when these divorces happen, you then, especially when there are children involved, you then have situations that necessitate for co-parenting. And sometimes it works out well, sometimes it doesn't. We have a few success stories, and we have some stories that are not so great. So that's why we're having this conversation this evening and seeing how to make it work, especially with the statistics and the figures that we're having on the rise. So I'm going to hand it over to you, our coach in the house. I'm sure by virtue of the work that you have done and you have been doing, we have had people, maybe you may have come across some of these scenarios where people are dealing with this and they're like, okay, how do I make it work? How do I make it work? So I'm just going to hand over to Mrs. Olubakin now. Let's see how we can get this conversation going.
Thank you very, very much. This is a conversation that affects every one of us as a society. It's not just for the people who are involved. Okay, it's not just about the two parents who have decided to go their separate ways for one reason or the other. It's not also just about the children who have found themselves now from a broken home or who came from a broken relationship, because there are times that a relationship doesn't end in marriage, and yet there's a child already. It's not just about these people, it's about the society as a whole, because we meet them everywhere. We have to interact with them. We have to be part of, or in one way or the other, actually be part of whatever challenges it is that being in this segment is bringing their way. Their children also will have to mix with other children who are from a complete family, so to speak, in school, in places of worship, playground, clubs, and all of this. So we all have to chip in, because it affects everyone. That is just by a way of introduction. Before I will now say, let me go into what I think on how to make co-parenting work, or how to make it easier for the people involved.
Okay. All right. Before you get into that, then let's look at, let's really break it down and say, okay, in case some people are co-parenting and they don't realize that they are co-parenting. So basically, who are co-parents, right? I did give some statistics that came from the point of a divorce. So you have instances where a couple was married, they have children, and then somewhere along the line there's a breakdown of that marriage, and then they end up as co-parents. What other category of people fall into this scenario of co-parenting? That's the first question. Then the second question, what possible scenarios do we have? Because while I was reading up on this and trying to do some research, it will shock you the extent to which you have. I think there's a term that emerges from co-parenting with more extensive sort of family arrangements. They now call them blended families, right? So so you can have someone who, say, was married. I was reading and my mind was just spinning. I'm like, what is all this? So you have somebody, for example, who is married. Let's say a woman is married. She has a daughter with her husband, and then the husband, they have a problem. The marriage breaks up, right? So you have this one family, this unit. You have a child from that. Then there are also instances where somebody has had multiple marriages with multiple children and different wives. And then you now have that, you have somebody that has to, so let's say as a woman, I meet a man who has been married and I'm his fifth wife. Or the 4 marriages have broken down. There are children in all those marriages, right? And I'm the 5th wife and I go ahead and I get married to this person, for instance, and I have a child with the person, and then my marriage with this person who has been married 4 times then splits up. And then you now have co-parenting, and then you start seeing terms like wife with the stepmom, you start seeing terms like wife-in-law. There are just so many scenarios to this that blew my mind. But being that you get to interface a lot more with these things, help us understand who and what kind of scenarios can we see in co-parenting.
Okay, thank you. So one of the scenarios is the one that you just described, which would eventually lead to blended families. A blended family would be a family where let's say 2 people who have been married before, or 2 people who have children from previous relationships, are now coming together in marriage and bringing their children from their previous relationships into that marriage, either to live in or to visit and live to the other parents who are now involved now, to their homes. So that is what blended families usually look like. Of course, co-parenting would have to come in a blended family in an even more complicated way, because now we are not just talking about the father and the mother of the child or children. We are now talking about a stepmom now, and possibly also a stepdad in the mix. So that is one variation of it. The other one is would be the more popular one, which will be that there was the marriage has ended, and now we are looking at how to take care of the children. So it is still only both the parents that are involved. That is one scenario. Another one will be where the parents of the children or the child did not get married. So before there was an actual marriage, they decided to part ways, or plans for marriage didn't work out, or maybe it was never in the deal. A pregnancy just occurred and it's, a baby is here now. And both of them now have to come together, even though no longer in an intimate relationship, but they now have to come together to be there for that child together, bring the child up together, and make decisions concerning the child together. So in my line of work, I have dealt more with the last category.
Is that where you have the term? Is that where you have the term baby mama and baby papa?
Exactly.
Seems to be what obtains here. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. I've had to deal more with the last category of people, and I can say categorically that even though there was no marriage, the emotions are still as strong and the challenges are still as severe when it comes to now having to come back together to make decisions and bring up a child together.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I mean, when you talked about emotions and the severity of emotions, even in cases of people who haven't been married before, I remember the story, though this couple was married, but the severity of emotions line you put out there just brought this up for me. 12 years ago, I think, there was an 11-year-old child who just barely escaped death because of this scenario. Now, what happened is his parents, his mom and his dad, they had been married. And then, you're having different reports on different sides of the table. The woman says, even though I was not around, we split the relation, we split up and I was sending money for him to take care of the child, and I want some form of custody. I want to be able to parent this child as well. While the man, on the other hand, is saying, look, this woman left us. She just got up and left when this child was 2 years old, and I've been taking care of the child. Now they have come to the point where they're trying to discuss parenting the child. And, the woman shows up, even sleeps in her former husband's house. And then 2 days later, in the bed, the same bed with her son, who is now 11 years old, sleeps in the same bed with her son, only for her to wake up in the middle of one night with the anger and everything of the fact that she wasn't having her way in terms of parenting the child or taking the child or whatever. Now proceeds to take a knife and try to split her son in two so that she will take half and the man will take half. All because they couldn't come to an agreement on how to co-parent that child. It was by the mercies of God that boy survived. And the woman was found and apprehended, and she said she thought that would be the best way to settle the matter. So, when you say emotions running high in these scenarios, you can imagine.
That's a very great examples of emotions that have.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, that woman she needs help. That's extreme.
I'm telling you. She says,
that's not normal.
Since I can't have him, you too, you can't have him. Okay, let's share him into two. Her own child. And then when you sit down and you take proper stock of that situation, I'm sure if she was tried outside the country, they would say she had a mental breakdown and all of that, and then tried to charge her based on that.
She would.
Yes.
She would be in a mental home first.
Yeah. So these
before explanations, before
exactly,
because that is that's extreme.
It is.
But truly frustrations,
they're
high emotions coupled with hurt, and then still having to be face to face with whatever is causing you the hurt when you have not been able to deal with it, or you have not been handed strategies on how to cope with it, could lead to such an extreme behavior.
Some other scenarios that
and
we
it's not
see.
everybody.
Yeah.
In as much as we are looking at co-parenting, it's not everybody that can manage it. It's not in every situation that co-parenting is even advisable. Okay? So co-parenting will mean that parents that are separated, they are cordial enough. They are cordial enough to be able to put the child's needs
first
above their own urge. They are cordial enough to be able to put the child's well-being above whatever it is that they have, whatever issues that they had with their partner or their ex that made them separate.
Yeah.
Okay? To be able to co-parent successfully, it means that even though we have gone our separate ways, it's not like one of us is mad. Are you getting me? It's not like one person will say highly physically abusive or highly verbally abusive. So these other things too have to be in place.
Okay.
It is not everybody. It's not everybody that can do it. Imagine if someone had been married to another person and they had to go their separate ways, say because the guy or one of them is a heavy drug user. Can you see?
Yeah.
In such a case, it may not even be wise to expose the child or the children to the parent who is dealing with drug addiction. Can you see? So it's not all the time, it's not in every scenario, it's not in every situation that co-parenting is advisable. So the first thing will be to analyze the situation. Okay? So if we analyze it and we say, okay, it's okay. It's just that both of us as adults, we are no longer getting along, or he offended me, there was one thing he did that I could not forget, or one thing she did that I cannot forgive, and we have now decided to go our separate ways, or we have fallen out of love and the court has granted us divorce based on irreconcilable differences, all of these things, then we can now begin with co-parenting. So it's not going to work in every situation. I just needed to really quickly drop that.
And it was great that you made that distinction. At least, to the best of my knowledge, where you have those cases, there are, those extreme cases where one or the other partner is not quite fit to handle a child. You have them not as much as in cases where they can actually sit down and have those conversations. But, so let's get to people who actually can take on the responsibility, even though it will still be a complicated venture for them, even though it still requires cordiality, still requires some level of civility between the two of them. And, and also it requires one key component, which is communication. So let's look at some of the common challenges of people who are doing this and see how we can make them work. So what are the most common ones that we would see, first of all, before we get into how to make them work?
What are the common challenges?
Yes, of people who are actually co-parenting. Or can co-parent.
So there is the issue for the parents now. There is always the issue of wanting to leave your past in the past, but now you are unable to, because of the child.
Yeah.
Can you see that? So you have to face this man. You have to always face this woman, maybe on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, depending on the arrangement you have on ground. Another challenge will also be that of boundaries. And I think that the two recent times that, I have had to deal with this, what I focused on for my clients was boundaries. Okay, so my two clients were women. They found themselves in a situation where they have a baby with this guy. So it's a baby daddy, baby mama situation.
Okay.
So they have a baby with this guy and they are trying their best to co-parent, okay? Little children, actually, for both of them. And then here is the guy, in as much as they have gone their separate ways. They are no longer in a relationship. There's no intimacy. It's no longer an intimate relationship. All they share now is this child and taking care of the child. And the guys begin to, I don't know, it's not jealousy really, but so you've been talking to men. You've been trying to expose my child to your boyfriend. Do you understand? Where are you going? I mean, things that on a normal day shouldn't be his business because you have moved on from that relationship. And it seems like my clients are not allowed to have a life anymore, or a romantic life, or move on into other relationships and pursue love because they deserve it and they want it, simply because there is a baby daddy in the picture. And so this will be one of the challenges, being able to maintain a boundary, to say all that is between me and you is this child. We will be civil, we'll be respectful to each other, and all we will discuss is the well-being of this child. So that will be one of the challenges. Another one is actually still part of boundaries, you know, but it's falling into bed with each other again. Because I would say that is a familiar path already. So there's something they call Okafor's law. I don't know if you've heard about it before. And it simply says that if you slept with someone before, you can sleep with the person again.
To what end?
Just that the possibility is always
there. I see.
Okay. And that it is always even easier than you think to fall back into bed with somebody you have slept with before, no matter the circumstances through which, or the circumstances that made you part ways in the first place. So you can imagine that now you are exes, you are trying to move on, and it happens. You are trying to move on. The child is now 3 years old, but one day in a vulnerable moment, or I don't know, you know, that happens. You are back to square one. All the emotions that you've been building, you've been healing yourself, you've been moving on in your own personal journey in life. You know, it feels like all of that work has gone to waste. So these are some of the challenges that people face. Another one will be agreements generally.
Agreements on how to raise the child, how to fund it. Parenting style. Okay.
Yes. Like, what exactly are we doing? So one parent may say that it's not good to feed the child, say, soft drinks. Excuse me. And the other one will say it's not bad. And now, because they are not a couple, do you understand? It's easier for husband and wife because, well, they have a great relationship already. They are together. They are doing this together. It's easier for husband and wife to navigate. They also have those kind of challenges.
Yeah.
It's not like they don't. Where husband thinks this is good and wife thinks, no, it is bad. But here we are now. The child spends some days here and goes on to spend, say, the weekend at the other place. And at the other place is being fed, say, sweet drinks or even candies at night. The other parent does not like it. The relationship is not so cordial. It's easy for things like this to lead to, outbursts and unnecessary arguments. So agreement, even on the school to put the child in. So it now seems that co-parents have to do a lot more talking than even the normal parents that are living together. I don't know. I really don't know, but that's how it seems.
Communication, yeah.
Because you have to now agree on everything so that everything doesn't lead to an argument for the sake of the child. Agreements on school. After you agree on school, then another thing that proves to be a challenge is the financing of this child now. Who takes care of what? One parent may decide that, okay, I only want to, give, say, 100,000 a month. I don't want to do much more. I can't do more than that. The other parent may feel that this 100,000 may not be enough, or she may say it's not enough, depending on who the child is staying with primarily. Because even though it is co-parenting, there is a home, there is a particular place where the child stays primarily.
Yes.
Exactly. So the other parent gets in probably during the weekend and then also has more opportunity during the holidays. Because of school, it is important that the child has a primary home where he stays. All right. So figuring out how to go about the finances too. It's one of the areas where there has been a lot of challenges because, arguments, they just seem to argue back and forth about who takes care of what.
And then also on the finances, there's something else that I noticed that comes up every now and then. In the event that there's financial inequality, so maybe when the child is at the mother's house, for instance, the child is, may say the mother is wealthier or has a little bit more money than the man, or vice versa, the man has a little bit more money than the woman, then there is that financial inequality that comes up, and then you find that you have to now start to make decisions that will tally across board, across both households, that will benefit that child. And you see, the thing about these things is that these children, as they grow, you have, there are different stages in their lives that they tend to either be confused by these disparities, these differences, or they tend to take advantage of it. One of the two.
Take advantage,
right?
yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that in. There's another one I saw about maintaining consistency, right? And this cuts across whether it's finances, whether it is disciplinary practices, whether it is decisions that are being made, parenting styles, all of that. Where there is an inconsistency across the two households on all the issues that concern the child, it's a major, major challenge as well. Just wanted to chip that in. Are there any other challenges
and
you'd like to share?
little children are known to take advantage of this kind of things.
They will, yes. So
They will.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. As they are younger, when they are younger, it's confusing for them. As they grow older, they begin to play on the weaknesses that these situations present, and then they start to take advantage
the
of
loopholes.
it. Yes. And sometimes it's just the confusion that goes with them, grows with them. And then what you have are children who are grown and mentally, the world is not unbalanced, but they're not at their prime mental state because they're constantly having to deal with these two things. Oh yeah, speaking of which, one of the things that also is a major challenge that affects the children, I think, is when you have unresolved issues on either side of the table. And then what now happens is when the child is with this parent is trying to slander the other parent. And when they go back, they're trying to slander the other one. So when
that is terrible.
when the issues are unresolved, the child is caught in the center, and they're having to deal with that as well. Sometimes the slander even gets so bad that, if the child is at, say, the father's, for instance, he's talking down on the mother to everybody that cares to hear. Teachers or relatives or friends, random people that just come into their lives, even their own personal friends, right? So there is also that challenge. I think that just stems from unresolved issues. And sometimes you start out with this co-parenting thing and you're being as civil as possible and you're being as cordial as possible. But when you cannot reach agreements on certain things, it starts to bleed in. And then the next thing, you're having spiteful behavior. And, and then sometimes you even have cases where it's now a case of give me my child. They would violate, if there was a custody agreement in place, they would violate it completely. And the next thing you come and you want to pick up your child and the child is not even there for you to see again. So I think even before we talk about any of the challenges, it's that one of unresolved issues which tends to contribute to many other challenges that you will see, when it comes to, co-parenting. Okay.
And unfortunately, if they could resolve their issues, they would have been parents together, not co-parents in the first place. So unresolved issues will always be there. It's not going to go away. This is a very peculiar situation. So I would say that they have to learn to put their hearts aside when dealing with the child. Okay, and they have to know that this is for the benefit of the child. It's not healthy for a child to continue to hear the father speak so badly, so terribly of his mother, and then to get back to the mother and hear the mother speak also so terribly of the father. It leaves them in such a confused state. So the parent will have to control their hearts, control their anger, put it aside. When they are dealing with the children, you should not vent or rant to your children about their parents. You should find a therapist. Look for another outlet. If you have a close friend or anyone that was part of your story from the beginning, any other person you are comfortable to share those things with, it is better than, having those discussions or saying those things to your children about their other parent. So it is one of the keys to having a successful co-parenting relationship for the sake of the child. It is always for the sake of the child.
Okay. Well, since you are talking keys already, then let's get proper into that conversation. If you're just joining 95.1 Nigeria Info, we have been talking about making co-parenting work. I started by putting out some statistics of why co-parenting is on the rise. Not just in Nigeria, but in other parts of the world. And so you are having your typical family structure of father, mother, and child then begin to shift. Sometimes you now have a child that has to deal with her mother, her father, and a stepmother. In some cases, you have a child or children who have to deal with her mother, her mother's husband, and then you also have her father and her father's wife. And then you just find out that, somehow, I know our therapist and our coach said it's primarily between the parent, the two parents involved. But sometimes you have even more complicated situations where, the mother has a system, the father has a system, but the people that they are married to, in the event that they are married, now bring their own, into it. And, so the child is usually just caught in this whole thing, and you're trying to figure out how to make these things work. I know I explained it from the point of the child, but I wanted us to be able to get like a broad picture of how it is. Because even me, when I started explaining from the point of the parents and the spouses initially, and I was talking about wife, step-in-law, wife-in-law, and all of that. Some of these scenarios would get your head ringing. So we have been talking about making co-parenting work, and we have dealt largely on challenges, and we're about to get into how to make them work. So solutions to some of the challenges that have been talked about. And yes, we have gotten into some of them, but we're going to get into them in a little bit more detail. But at this time, if you do want to contribute to the conversation, you want to share with us, you want to maybe tell us of your experience and how you're able to overcome it, if there was a way to overcome it, you can join in on the conversation now. It's 0700 951 0000 or 080 959 74869, or you can reach us on WhatsApp on 080 999 30137. You can call in and you can send in a WhatsApp message. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube at Nigeria Info FM Abuja. So you can join in on the conversation there as well. I'm seeing some Facebook comments, which I'll be reading out in a little bit. Just before we get to the phone lines and your contributions, we have given some scenarios, but the one that is more prevalent, I think, or maybe is it the one that is more popular but not necessarily prevalent, is the one where you have baby mamas and baby fathers. So couples who are not necessarily married, or who were not married at the time they had their children, and then they're trying to co-parent that child. Let's take some contributions. Oof, I lost that caller. Please call back. Over to Facebook. Look at Thomas says, hi, Somi, keep up with a good topic right there. Watching you for me, do thank you. Moazu John Lasisi from Jigo Buari, Abuja says, good evening. Thank you for the compliments. Baby mama and baby father, as said by Emperor Malinga Audu. I also see you, Kelvin Oshule, saying, well done. Thank you so much. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Abdul back from my...
Welcome, Abdul. Go ahead.
What I see in this your own conversation with the teacher or counselor, I don't know how to put it, but actually, it depends on the way you approach a lady. You respect her, she respects you, you get married, you even have a child in your house. There is certain people, everybody has his own way of doing things in his own personal house. My wife, I married her from her people. I brought her into my house. We have kids, let's say, or 3 kids. I will not tolerate anybody from outside, either my relatives or my brothers or my sisters, to step into my personal business with my wife and my children. Yes, they are aunties to him. But in a situation whereby if you allow rampant intervention on the respect of your own child with the parents of your wife, constantly with your own parents, it's going to escalate problem even between you and your wife. And the child will be wondering at tender age, this issue is coming up. He will be contemplating, these people are fighting because of what? This thing is going to start having place in his own memory. My mother and her relatives, they are thinking I am only belong to them, or my father and his own relatives and his own brothers or sisters, they think I am only belong to them. What cause all these things? So it is good sometimes to be able to make sure that even if your relatives can step into your house, there is a line you can draw, line to them to cross. Not anything that will intervene into it. Because sometimes it causes problems. Just like some people brought their own mothers into their own house to stay. I cannot bring my mother into my house to stay because my wife should respect my mother well and my mother should respect her. Immediately I allow her to live in that house, that respect is going to come down. That's what I see.
Thank you, Abdul.
Very much. Keep doing what you're doing and do it very well.
Okay. All right, Abdul there sharing his own perspective. I think there was a slight mix-up, though. Abdul was talking about an existing family structure where you have husband, wife together, and then the external factor would be relatives there. And thank you so much for sharing your take, Abdul. However, the conversation this evening is on families that have either broken up or never started together in the first place, but then have children, and they're thinking about how to put their differences aside and put the child first so that they raise a child that is healthy, mentally okay, and able to function at optimal level. And let's take one more call. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good evening.
Yeah, I wanted to call you early, but I can't make it. It's Mimi. How was your day? How are you?
Mimi, welcome. My day was great. Thank you so much. You want to contribute to the conversation?
Okay. Yeah. So, you don't want to ask for me, like, I have to make up my mind before I get married with you. Then maybe when I marry with you, somebody else is going to stay, maybe your parents, your family. So we have to negotiate it before I get married with you, you know. Why are we doing like that? Because of our children. They will learn something good from us. You know, when they see us maybe having some quarreling, maybe with your family, they will not be happy. So we have to do that even before we get married and say them. And if it's true that, compulsory, they have to stay with us. So I think you have to have a constantly meeting with them. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. You understand? So that the family can be peaceful. Because nowadays, we don't understand I'm sorry to say that some family, the way they used to behave when their child get married or when their daughter get married. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thoughts and contributions there coming from our listeners. But let's come back to what it is that we are really getting into this evening. It is about managing broken families where there is a child involved and ensuring that we get it right. So if you're calling in now, I would like to hear from you. Do you have you been in such a scenario, or do you know someone who has been in that scenario? And what we're trying to get from this conversation from you, our listeners, is how did they make it work? How did a family that was once together that ended up being separated, but they had a child in between, how were they able to successfully co-parent? How were they able to even though they had moved on and married other people, still maintain a relationship with their exes so that they could raise their children. That's the conversation we're having now. All right, let's come back to our therapist in the house. Mrs. Funmi, we had started the conversation on ways that that it can work, and just from some of the challenges that we were listing, some solutions were coming up. But let's talk a little bit more about that, starting with the child themselves. That thing about being able to put a child first, in spite of your grievances with your spouse, how realistic is that in this our part of the world, in this climate?
I will not I will not be able to say that it is totally realistic. But if co-parenting will be a success, you don't have a choice. If you are going to be able to do this co-parenting thing successfully and not damage the child in the process, okay? Not give the world a confused or angry or highly emotionally volatile child, you have to give it your best. And that is why your own healing is where you should start from. You're going to have to pay attention to your healing from that relationship or from that marriage, from that hurt first. That is the beginning before we now bring in your relationship with this, your ex now, going forward for the sake of the child. So if you find it difficult and you think that it is going to be impossible to have a civil conversation with this person, if you think that you cannot be in the same room with them for any reason, you don't want to see them, you have to work on your own healing. You just have to. It is non-negotiable if you want to co-parent successfully. Remember, everything you are going to be doing now is for the sake of the child. And I truly believe that co-parenting, is the next closest thing to the natural order of what a family should be like and what, the kind of environment that a child should grow up in, which is with a father and a mother. So co-parenting is the next option. It is when it is totally, impossible or totally dangerous that we would now say, okay, let there be no contact. But it is always better for a child to have a father and a mother. It's always better for a child to have contact with a father and a mother for, when they are growing up, as much as it is possible. One of the most damaged don't let me use the word damage. Let me use the word troubled. One of the most troubled adults that I have met and I've had to deal with, the root of our problems is a father that disappeared sometimes in our childhood and a mother that spoke ill of that father every day. Can you see? Every single day. So it wasn't bad enough that she grew up without a father figure in a home where there was no dad and mom. She couldn't see those relationships and, she got married and she began to have problem, of course. Now, when I began to work with her, I realized that the things she has heard her mom say about her father to her every day was what actually undid, if there's a word like that, that was what actually damaged her. And it's also bad that if mother swore that never, you will not contact your father, not while I am alive. So even the man she married went to plead, let should be in a home with a father and a mother. So where that is impossible, it should be embraced. It should be worked on for the sake, always for the sake of the child. Even if it takes dealing with this person like a business partner. Being, totally official. If it will mean communicating by mails or what, just try. Because for the sake of the child, like I said.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can quickly summarize everything that we've talked about co-parenting is it's something that is becoming more and more common. And here's the thing: I don't even think it's a case of us saying it is becoming more and more common. I think to some extent it has existed for the longest possible time, but they're not conversations that people really come out to have because either they don't understand the impact or lack of thereof. I think it's just coming out more and more, given the kind of society that we're seeing that we have. A lot of people have said, oh, when you look at our problems, we have lost our morals or values and all of that. It comes from what's happening at the family level. It starts from there, right? So when we are talking co-parenting, I'd like to say again that this came from our conversation on single parenting. At some point, Ms. Funmi was like, look, if you must be a single parent, is fine. But if not, consider co-parenting. And I know that is a complicated issue, which is why I brought it here. So speaking about communication, or rather speaking about complications, there are things that you must take into consideration when you want to co-parent. First and foremost, you need to have healed, or you need to be in a place where you are at least willing and able. There is willingness and there's ability. You need to be willing and able to put your child first. And what that will require is that you would have to have communication with your, co-parent. There has to be cooperation. There has to be consistency, right? So communication, cooperation, consistency. You need to be able to be understanding. Another thing that we have a lot in this kind of situations is maybe by virtue of this person's schedule, that person's schedule, it can inconvenience the other person. You need to be understanding of your co-parent's schedule, especially when they're married, they're remarried and they have another family. That some of those things you need to take into consideration. All of this to ensure the emotional stability of that child. And when we are able to do this, what are some of the benefits? You provide emotional stability to the children, in this case, and sometimes even you as the co-parent, you find that you're more emotionally stable. It will improve communication skills even between the children and their parents when you're not constantly bickering or angry, or when they're in your space. Your children can tell when you're happy. You also
get a break every now and then.
There is that as well, which is something that is very important. But your children can tell when you're not happy, and if you're not happy, I promise you, there's a way it tells on a child, especially when they're quite young. So you need to be. When you do this, you're emotionally more stable. It helps you. It helps your child. And then you're able to provide a more positive role model to your child, right? And then it reduces the need for constant fighting and bickering and back and forth. Let's take this caller and then we'll come back to round up. Hello? Oof, I'm so sorry. I lost you. Please call back again. It's 0700 951 0000 080 74869, and on WhatsApp it's 080 30137. I said those numbers quite fast, didn't I? Okay, let's go again. 0700 951 0000 080 959 74869 and 080 999 Let's take this. Hello. Hello.
Somi. Good morning. Okay, good evening.
Good evening. Welcome. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening to your guest.
Yeah, he's saying good evening, Mrs. Funmi.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, madam. My name is Michael Devoy. It's a very, very, very important topic and touchy one too, because marriage has always observed that when people are not matured enough and get into marriage has pitfalls, and there are faults if it's not properly cultivated and handled. We are even talking about on this part of our world, when you have people co-parenting, most of the cases I've seen is either the man is more well-to-do or more stronger than the woman, and in the process, if he feels that he doesn't like leaving the child with the woman. He will just collect his child and go and hand it over to one of his sisters or one of his extended family members.
As no longer co-parenting.
So yeah, basically. So and if you look at the West, their own is even a worst case scenario, because when you have courts deciding most of the things, let's say along the line, a lot of you can forgive each other and come back together. Because it's already happened. I believe you will be able to forge a more better front for the future of that very children, the child, and then to take what comes with life. Because it's already happened. It's a very sad scenario, honestly. People should be matured and ready to tolerate one another when going into marriage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Okay. We have a few more minutes to wrap this up, so I'm just going to let our therapist bring us to a close. What are your final thoughts on this, Mrs. Olubakin?
Okay, so I would advise people who want to, explore co-parenting. First of all, I would advise that as much as possible, you should embrace co-parenting. Don't deny your child of an opportunity to have a relationship with their other parent. If you are the primary caregiver for that child, it is not fair to the child, and it is not fair to your ex. This is their child too, okay? So as much as possible, embrace it. There are even many situations where the parents are even no longer in the same city. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you are always in each other's spaces. In many cases, you are living far apart. One might even be out of the country. Allow the child to have phone conversations with the other parent. And I believe last week I was saying that accept financial help. Don't decide to do it all alone, so that maybe you can tell a story that's being vindictive. So that maybe you can tell a story tomorrow and say, I did everything for you. Where was your mother, or where was your father? It doesn't work. Sooner or later, these children will grow up, find their parents, the other parent, and hear their side of the story. So don't go that route. Accept financial help. And then make a co-parenting plan. All right? Mm-hmm. You don't just co-parent by saying we are co-parenting and then calling every other weekend or every other mother. Okay, should I send the child Abi Bawo? Are you not leaving the child for me? Mm-mm. Have a plan that you are working with from the beginning. Okay, so if you are doing 2 weeks during every holiday, you are going to go, the child is going to the other parent, have it in agreement. If you are saying every other weekend, somebody is coming to pick the child, or the other parent, or one parent is dropping the child off at the other parent's house, let there be a plan. And for finances, to talk about it, I would really, really encourage that you lay all the aspects down on the table about the child's education, the school, the health, if it is insurance you are using, or if it's pay as you go, whatever it is, lay it all down on the table and talk about it. How special events will go, how holidays will go. Also talk about backup plans, all right? Mm-hmm. In case both of you are unavailable, I don't believe that it is impossible. There could be a time that one person is out of town and the person that is in town also has something or somewhere to be. Where can the child be? Who can we call upon that both of you can agree on, so that there will be no quarrels, no bickering, no back and forth. And lastly, after you have made a plan, right, a co-parenting plan, of course, a co-parenting plan should also involve your parenting style, what you both expect. When the child is over at yours, he goes to bed by 8:30 when he's here. He goes to bed by 9 when he's here. Please continue over there. Don't allow her watch TV, late into the night. Because that is one thing that these parents do. The one that the child spends less time with, finds himself or herself trying to pamper the child to make up for the long absences. Mm-hmm. So please, talk about it. Let them go to bed by 9. Okay. So that when they come back here and school resumes, it's not a struggle. Talk talk, and talk.
Very important.
Sincerely. Communicate
right.
a whole lot, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Olubakin. We need to go on a short break. Let's see if we can take a few more calls and reactions when we come back. But for now, it's 95.1 Nigeria Info. We will be right back after this. Do stay with us.
This is Nigeria Info.
Nigeria Info.
This is Nigeria Info.
Nigeria Info.
This is Nigeria Info.